Well, what about France, who've made a really interesting coaching appointment today by bringing Sean Long in to work alongside the likes of Trent Robinson? Are we
Is it?
seeing a resurgence of the French national team? And we need to be excited about that if we look at the talent on the field that performed so creditably for the Dragons, and a coaching team that could have the same kind of impact that Sean Edwards has had in France, although I gather they didn't win the Six Nations, although
I don't want to play devil's advocate, Phil, but if you look at how France performed at the last World Cup, has the Jason Battieri case ever been resolved?
well, I think the gentleman against who the case was has now stepped aside, so it probably isn't much of a case anymore.
Yeah.
But there needs to be, and there seems to be, and there will be under Trent Robinson's director of rugby guidance. There'll be a greater unity. There'll be a more
Yeah.
desire for the Dragons to be releasing players. The players themselves will want to play under him again. I think he's a real unifying force. If they can start playing some attractive rugby with Laurent Frayssinous and Sean Long at the helm, then it could be an exciting period of rugby. Do we now need to nail in fixtures regularly between England and France? Ideally in France to make them testing in the first instance, um,
Well, I
and
was
have those on board.
I was just going to say, I don't think it's attractive rugby they need to play. They need to play winning rugby. They actually need to win some games. I think that's the problem. And the unity, as you mentioned, there's been massive issues behind the scenes. They never seem to have a full strength team. Even the Nines, which was probably the last, well, apart from the GB Tour, the World Cup Nines in Sydney, even then they didn't have, a full strength, and they never seem to have the best 17 available on the park for whatever reason. So, if they can actually get their best team out there, and they are unified and they've got a good coach, because I think that, that's been issues, and if Trent Robinson, I don't know how much he's going to be involved, but, if he's running the show and Sean Long's there, then that is a positive, because I think we saw in the last World Cup, and I remember John Keir saying this at one point after Wales had been beaten by 50 or 40, the gap between the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere was growing. And you look at Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, the amount of the players that they can, draw on are all kind of top NRL players. So it's going to be interesting in the World Cup this year where we see those players are at. Because if you're a League One player and you're coming up against, Justin Olam or Happy Coruscant, it's not really a fair fight, is it?
I just think that France have always been their most difficult to beat and have got the greatest number of their top line players available when they've played at home. And we've also seen that there is a real appetite amongst French crowds for international rugby league. So that even at the last World Cup in 2013, when we had a group in France, some of the highest crowds in the group games were France playing in Avignon, and there is a feel, I think, under Luc Lacoste, who's their new president, that he does want to spread the game. So if you did take an international to the facilities that they've got at Toulouse, even if you took an England-France game to Paris, you've actually got something sellable. And I just think Robinson is the key to all of this, because clearly, Catalan were at their very best under him. A dual speaker, understands the culture. But if they've got the flamboyance of a Long working alongside him, they've got Frayssinous, who again very well respected amongst Bernard Gouache and people like that, who need to buy into all of this to get those players released. I'd just love to see, if we're going to lose the mid-season international, the first I think to get an extra week at the end of the season for internationals. I'd love there to be, put in for the next 3 years. England will definitely play in France. Between now and the next World Cup.
We need to get some French players in the NRL, along with the young English ones. Get them all over there, get them some experience. Although, alongside the Catalans bringing through French players, we saw London yesterday. I know they lost to York, but plenty of academy products in their squad as well, which is good to see for the development of the game outside of the north of England and such.